Hey, hope you guys been doing well. This is Jeff here. I got a topic that I've been meaning to talk about for quite some time now, something that I'm very deeply passionate about. And I've been getting a lot of questions about it. But to be honest, I've been having a hard time piecing this one together because there seems to be, for me, there's a lot of spanning topics in this one category. And today I want to just be able to talk about what keeps me motivated, what keeps me going, and how I was able to bounce back and continue to bounce back through the lows of my journey on pursuing my passion. This one's difficult, right? Because the more I think about this, the more I realize that staying motivated has always been, or being demotivated, getting demotivated comes from so many different angles. And figure that the best way I can target this and tackle this is to be able to talk about some of the sectors that bring me to a very demotivated state and talk about the stories that I have and what keeps me going every single day. And I hope this makes sense. I hope this is helpful. If you find this useful, I'll be happy to keep on going. If not, please let me know. But here we go. The first topic that I wanted to talk about here is this idea of competition through statistics, through numbers, through outcomes of other people, and this constant ongoing battle that we all have from reading articles from family, friends, from ourselves, of like reading these numbers and the averages, right? Percentages, and how bleak that brings you to. An example that I want to use for myself is going through the job search, right? Going through this progression of becoming an engineer. I feel like I was faced with that a lot. Every step of the way, it's like all the variables of the market is looking good, the market is looking bad. Hearing from family about your distant uncle's aunt's kid that just graduated from this prestigious school and now they're doing X, Y, and Z. I feel like on both positive and negative end, you're consistently, I have always consistently found the challenges of hearing the stories, hearing the facts of the outside world and the reality of, how society is doing, how folks around you are doing, and just being able to, and in comparing myself and place and just thinking about where I stand in terms of my own outcome and stats, where I am in my current state. And it always seems like I'm not enough and always seems like I'm behind. And so this is something that has like deeply demotivated me, because when you think about the uphill climb that you have to do to try to get past that, or how behind you are, it just seems so difficult. So first, I want to give you a story about how deep this runs for me and some of the challenges and a story that I've had to overcome, right? First, to start things off, for myself, right, my parents are grocery store workers, and my dad was a grocery store worker. He worked in the deli. He prepared food. He was like a cook and a food prep person. And then my mom was a lunch lady for a local elementary school. So jobs that are just like barely above the minimum wage. And I went to a high school, middle school that ranks in the bottom 10 percentile of in the nation in both math and reading and writing skills at the time. Not very good myself, although man, and at that school there was folks growing up, there was folks that were really in the dirt, that struggled through a lot growing up, right? I've seen a couple of them pass away. I've seen a couple of them go to jail. And of course I've seen a lot of kids that made it out and are doing great things, but myself included, I was an English second language student, ESL classes, which is usually classes that they give to folks that aren't like, their native language isn't English. But I was born in the US. Like you can see here, I don't have an accent or anything like that. So I guess that's just like a little visual of how bad I was at my reading and writing skills, for example. Just being delayed, just being educationally delayed due to circumstances, basically. And the reason why I wanted to start by that is because I realized very early on that my given statistical outcome was probably a little bit above what my parents were doing, right? To be an engineer, to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that was probably way out of the question from two parents from that environment, right? I guess the question that I have is like, how many kids become an engineer from being disadvantaged reading and writing, right? Like what is the outcome of that? And so I would say, like, at the very best, I would probably, if I worked really hard, I think at the very best, maybe late into my life, I probably like if I followed all stats, if I just followed the trajectory that I was after. My stat was probably just to become a chef or maybe a store manager or something like that, a grocery store manager, or maybe a little elementary school manager or something like that, a kitchen manager at the best. At the middle, I'd probably just work some sort of blue collar work, something like that. And then at the very least, it's not, I'll end up where my parents are. So that's where I was. And so every step of the way, I feel like I've been faced with this battle of comparison. And this battle of comparison starts all the way from the very beginning, where I have aunts and uncles and family members tell me that, especially when I moved to the Bay, they tell me like, hey, this is what your parents are doing. This is what other kids go to school in the Bay. They go to top universities. You should be happy once you finish school to make 20, 30K max, that kind of thing, right? Like barely above minimum wage. And then from entering my career, talking to even smarter folks, the story started shifting a little bit. Even though I am already into my profession, making decent money, the perspective shifts to, hey, this is probably your max, right? There's kids that went to Harvard or whatever, and now they're only doing X, Y, and Z things. So this is probably where we land, that kind of thing. So it's this constant battle every step of the way of this like competition through statistics and numbers and facts, right? And for me, it's always very demoralizing, especially in the early days. It's like, for myself, I have this goal. I have this goal to become an engineer. And when you face the reality of what that really means, especially in the circumstances that I come from, you realize that pretty much every single thing is up against you, right? Like the fact that I was even able to go to a library and study this in the Bay Area at my construction job at the time while I was like self-teaching myself was already a statistical improbability in many ways. Like I probably should have just been stuck at home near my parents, working blue collar with them, that kind of thing. I think about this a lot because during the days I don't feel confident and days I want to give up, and I'm fully aware, or if I talk to someone that I feel like brings me into the reality of things, the first thing I think about is that everyone around me is right. They're 100% correct. Most people, at least I hope most people I know, are not intentionally trying to hurt me or bring me down. In fact, they probably don't even care about me at all. It's more about them just bringing back factual information and being the smartest person in the room and giving you a heads up and just having conversation about facts. What I wanted to talk about here is that, okay, let's bring it into another scenario, right? Let's say that everything played out to the exact averages. And I listened to all the outcomes and the advice of what's true and what's not. And I'm now at my grocery store. I'm now the grocery store manager working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. I never pursued my goal of programming because it's difficult for a student like me, right? That's not realistic. Or folks are going to Harvard and they're not going to get to that. It's going to be hard for them. So what's the chances of you? I listened to that. I knew all the stats. So what would my life have been like, right? What would it have been like for me why would it have mattered to me if I would have sat at that grocery store, never have pursued what I was passionate about, but I knew all the facts in the world, every single one of them. I knew all the stats of the outcomes of like Harvard grads and Stanford grads and top universities and what it takes to get to. I read all the articles and Reddit posts about how difficult the job market is or how difficult it is to learn how to do these certain things. But I'm just sitting there working my grocery store shift. Why does any of that even matter at that point? And so my realization that I had a lot of times while I'm sitting there plugging away after my construction worker shifts at learning to pursue my goal is that I realized that I would rather be a person that took a risk, took a shot, and try to break the statistics that I was headed towards, learn something from that, than to look back and be that person in the room that can just like repeat all the facts back to you on what's in the news, what family, friends are doing. I'd rather have been the person that completely bombed and failed Still been at the grocery store because I failed completely, but at least been able to say that in my lifetime I went for what I went for what I care about and try to learn what I did, um, despite the circumstances, rather than to be the smartest guy at the grocery store. And so I think about that all the time as I've been more digging into this, as I've gotten better at the skills that I wanted to get to. I realize that's what life is about, right? Like life is not about living under the statistics as much as you can. It's about this active pursuit of being able to break past them. And I feel like we all bounce in and out of this mindset of being conservative and not taking any risk. And I'm not telling you to take risk all the time. Like statistics are real. If you run across a moving highway, it'd be really dumb. The statistics would be really low on you surviving or not getting hit by a car. But when it comes to things like your goals and your vision and your dream, is it worth it even if you were to fail? And I think that ultimately I continue to ask myself that. And the answer that I always came back to was absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Because despite all the hardship and the difficulties, it's if I were to have listened and accepted all the factual facts, why did it matter? I don't want to be the smartest guy at the grocery store or at my minimum wage job or on Reddit or whatever it may be, right? That doesn't it doesn't do me any good to know to be the smartest person in the room in those settings. On the other outcome that helps me really get past it. It's like a lot of people love to talk about the outcome, love to talk about what happens if you take these steps moving forward, but nobody wants to talk about what happens if you don't take any steps at all. It's easy to just talk about. It's so easy to talk about, hey, it's really difficult to pursue this other thing. But why don't we talk about how difficult it would be for you or what it would be for you if you didn't? And I feel like once you start phrasing things and putting things in that perspective, you start realizing that even no matter how big that risk is towards your goal, it ultimately ends up being way more worth it than to be stagnant and sitting in a space of no growth. I hope that makes sense. And again, like to close this all off, I think that I'm a person that I love statistics. I'm an engineer. How much I would love to be able to put my money, for example, in a bank account in an investment fund, get my 4% statistics with the market every single day, and be the most statistics driven person ever, where my family, my kids can just follow the straight path to success because I was able to offer that. But many of us today are not on that path to be able to take advantage of the stats of the world, of the average statistical outcome. So when your back is against the wall and your stat is pointed straight at a failing position, then what's the point of knowing the stat, right? You know it. We all know it. We all know the outcomes. Is it going to be better or worse than for you to just be able to take action on it? If you don't take action on it, what's the other outcome? What's the other statistical outcome? And I think that, right? And the statistical outcome is nothing. The outcome is always just no growth. That's ultimately what it ends up becoming. And so, what risk are you willing to take to pursue the things that you're passionate about? Even if you fail, will it be worth it than to have not done anything at all? Just a little food for thought for today. I hope that makes sense. I hope that was helpful. And if not, I'll talk to you on the next one. Later.